We've all learned throughout life that there are things you just don't want to touch. Hot stoves, mean animals, and turds, to name a few. In our trade, those things still apply, along with a lot more. On this episode of the podcast by Locksmiths and for Locksmiths, we'll get down and dirty on the downright dirty. I'm Tim Coleman, and along with Tyler J. Thomas and Jeff Moss, we are the Three Tumblers. When I go out on a job, the first thing I ask the customer is to show me all the work they want to have done. I pay attention to the hardware, keyways, and general appearance of the entries. Normally I can locksmith something together, but there comes a point where the hardware is either in such bad shape or quality, the doors are beat all to hell, or something is just really off with the customer. So the first thing that I get when I go to a residential job is when I'm ringing the doorbell, I look to see what's on their front door. And I can already see if it's Schlage, Kwikset, Yale, whatever it happens to be. And then when I'm doing the walkthrough with the customer, I'm able to say, yes, the same key will be able to go into all of these. But also look at what's on there. Is it something that's been discontinued for a long time? Is it something that's going to be a pain in the ass to take apart, like Kwikset Titan? I had a job a few weeks ago where they wanted an old Westlock knob rekeyed. And I called my boss and I'm like, how the hell do I get this thing apart? And he said, you don't, you sell them a new one. And just because it was probably 45 years old, at least. So, I mean, Tyler, when you were doing residential stuff or even, mostly residential stuff, but what kind of did you look for when you were getting there to the job? Like, was there certain types of hardware that you just wouldn't touch?
I wouldn't say wouldn't touch, but there would be things that I would be happy to see versus miserable to see. If I saw a smart key, I thought, oh yeah, this is going to be an easy one because they probably got it throughout the house, and this is just a quick job. Other stuff, older Wisers, remember the power bolt, stuff like that. You always had hesitation thinking, well, if I take it apart, something may break and they don't have replacement parts, so I'm going to be up shit's creek. But I'd always tackle stuff. I would just be more or less pleasant when I saw some things.
Right. And I mean, we even have a disclaimer that we give every customer that has smart key, because they do go wrong on occasion. And I tell people, look, 99.9% of the time it works, but the nature of the beast is they can just stop. Jeff, when somebody brings something into your shop and, says, hey, can you make a key for this? And it's something that's, wasn't good to start with.
Here's a perfect example that we get at least once a week is a master warded padlock key. It's not worth the $5 to make a key for something that will probably break the machine when a new lock with 2 keys is a lot cheaper. So we could cut them. We do have the blanks, but we don't bother. It's not secure stuff. It's not worth it. We'd much rather sell you a new lock pin tumbler with new keys and be on your way. Yes, we do have a machine that cuts other keys, but they're not solid steel necessarily. It's not worth the risk is not worth the reward.
Right. And also if you're, like we talked about in the pricing episode, if you have set itemized pricing, obviously you can adjust it, but you don't really want to. But if it's something, like the Titan knobs, if they don't have a current operating key, Titan are just, I hate Titan. Whenever I see it, I just cringe. And
I don't mind. I mean, they're not my favorite, but
but it was discontinued like what, 22 years ago?
No, I don't know where you get that info from. They still make them. The Kwikset, it was the Titan, then it was the Ultramax, now it's the Signature. We still get them. We have a couple customers that use them. They're still a pain. If you don't have the key, you have to pull the pin out from the back and do all this shit. I still don't like them, but they're not discontinued. So whoever says that is wrong.
Okay. Well,
But-
I stand educated then.
No, they didn't even come out maybe 20 years. They've not been out. They probably came out in the late 90s. But they're definitely not discontinued. Like if you look up a Quickset 780, because I know that's what we order, that's they don't call it the Titan, but it's definitely still there. I order them several times a year.
Gotcha. Have you either of y'all ever run across the really, really cheap doorknobs that kind of look like Quickset, but they're not, and they use that same wire retainer type mechanism to hold the cylinder in there?
Yeah, it's like the dollar store version.
Yeah, those things are a pain in the ass.
Yeah, those
I
are.
don't- I don't and the first time I ever ran across one, I don't think you can use that quick set pickle tool on it too. You got to rotate it 180 degrees, don't you?
Yep.
Yeah.
And try not to blow it all to shit whenever you take the plug out, like
I
I
saw-
did the first time.
Yeah, I saw one of those first time they came out, probably 08, 09, something like that, and smacking the shit out of that pickle fork, thinking, why in the hell is this not working? And then just by chance, I rotated it 180 degrees and it fell out. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, mine fell out and everything else fell out and the whole damn thing blew up. And I'd been on my own on the road for like, I don't know, 2 weeks, and 10-cylinder rekey took me 4 hours across 2 days.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't like it. Well, the next thing I was going to go on is if a customer has decent hardware, Schlage or decent Quickset, I will be fair to Quickset, or Baldwin or MTech or something like that. But the door's just gone all to shit. Is or it's the wrong door in the wrong setting. In other words, you go to a commercial property like an office building, and they've got residential doors with commercial hardware on it. That just, there are some things where like the doors are splitting apart. Jason went to a job the other day. It was a rekey, and he showed me pictures of it. He removed the Quickset Tylo knob and the Quickset deadbolt from a commercial hollow metal door. And when he did, the skin on the door just split wide open. And, it's just shit like that. And I know we can locksmith it. I had to locksmith something Thursday morning, the same thing, hollow metal door, and the skin was split off of it, and it was pulling the closer off and making the closer malfunction. And I fixed it because I went where the skin meets the top frame of the door and drilled a couple holes through there, tapped it for quarter 20, and shot some quarter 20 bolts in there to hold the thing together. But I think there comes a point in time where when we see something like that, we just kind of have to say, no, I can't do what you want me to do because the door's rotten.
I mean, there's also people that want to cheap out and buy a Schlage FE or a Schlage, residential keypad deadbolt for commercial stuff. I mean, it's not going to hold up. We try to tell them that it's not the right thing for it, but if they don't listen and they're installing it themselves, then that's on them. If the door's too messed up, sure, we turn work down. If it can't be secured, we're not going to put new hardware on something where the door won't even swing or whatever the case is.
Or where you're going to have to use a sledgehammer to beat the frame back into place.
Correct.
Yeah. Tyler, what's the worst thing you've seen that, as far as doors, like the condition of the whole door and frame and everything, what's the worst thing that you've seen that you just would not touch?
Well, the weirdest I ever seen that I did touch was a guy made his own door in his garage. And it was like, I don't know, it had wood framing, but in the middle was almost like a styrofoam, a little bit tougher than styrofoam that he had poured or sprayed or whatever. And he was adamant that wanted multi-lock deadbolts on them, like throughout the house. I put those on and made it work, but that's the strangest one. Probably shouldn't have touched it, but yeah, it was his house.
Remind me to send you pictures of the door in my shop here at home, going between the side that everybody sees on camera and the storage side. I will send you pictures of that.
I want to see that.
Yeah, it was definitely a homemade door, and it's actually double swing doors. So one swings in, one swings out. So the last thing that I want to get to in this block is the door's fine, the hardware's fine, but the customer is not fine. Like they're wanting, like, there's a family living together and they don't like each other. So they want to lock each other out and have like double cylinder deadbolts between the upstairs and the downstairs where they each live. Or the one customer like I had that was flaky as shit trying to get a hold of him, and he would only communicate through text message except when he called demanding to know where we were, after he ignored phone calls, text messages, and emails for days and hours. And I finally get out there and he wants cam locks on literally every cabinet in his kitchen, including the cabinet that stores the trash can. And he also wants residential deadbolts on his linen closets, his food pantry, everything. And he wants it all to be on the same key. That just, no, I called my coworker while I was in the back of the truck because I was trying to cut a key to code for a toolbox that he had. And I was having her run the code. And I said, look, I'm a fucking cop and I am getting weirded out by this guy. I said, I don't want to come back here. And I quoted him, like, for all the other stuff, I quoted him like $3,000. And he said, okay, how soon can you get it? And I'm like, 12 to 24 weeks at minimum. And I gave him names and phone numbers of two of our competitors in the area and said, you would probably want to check with them. They can probably help you better than we can. I mean, Jeff, you kind of touched on it earlier, customers insisting on stuff. What have you seen like that?
Not so much. I mean, there's been a deadbolt sitting on our will call shelf for 5 years because the lady insisted on Medeco, but she only paid for half of it and never saw her again. It's been there since before I worked there. The people that, like, look, we know that you have peaks and you're the only one who's getting the key made. So either you lent your key to somebody or you left your door open, because there's no way that somebody's copying that key. More so just what the stuff that comes in that I hate doing is, master keying defiant stuff. There's locks that are so shitty that when you try to put 2 pins in the chamber, the plug has to be drilled deeper for the pins to sit properly. The locks are not worth the cost of rekeying, but we do it. And
that's your whole next block. You get to tell us all about that then. But thanks for the tease.
Like we've said before, when you work for somebody else, you have to do what you're told to do.
You do. I mean, when the boss hands you something and it's like, God, this is going to be such a fucking pain in the ass, I don't want to do it. He's like, do it. And you have to. You feel like somebody has sent you out to collect all the dog turds from the park. Tyler, I imagine you deal with a lot of different customers and you have, especially in, earlier in your career. I mean, what are some of the little telltale signs of a customer that's going to be one that you don't want to touch, you don't want to be involved with, like when you first start talking to them?
I've always found that the worst ones aren't necessarily residential. It's commercial business tenants, not owners, tenants that are trying to be sneaky about rekeying or changing out hardware really quickly because an eviction's coming or something or another. But people that are very adamant that cost isn't an issue, need to be done right away, but it's an obvious non-security issue, no lost keys, no break-ins, anything like that. Just, I need this lock changed right away. I need to, add this right away. That was always a red flag to me. And that was, let's see. That was the first time I had a gun pulled on me, one of those situations. So those always set up red flags for me. Residential, not so much. It's their house, what they want to do, what they want to pay. I'd be happy to acquiesce, wouldn't agree or recommend it, but if they want to do it, more than happy to help.
I mean, the thing is, though, like we said in another episode, you have those life safety regulations that you can fall back on if you have a residential customer that you don't want to really do what they are requesting. And you can find that life safety standard somewhere. Like in the example that I gave a little bit ago, families who don't like each other, but they live together and they want to lock each other out.
Well, in Georgia, they don't really have much to say as far as life safety for single dwelling units. When you get into split use, multi-use things, yeah, but if you've got people living in a house that's considered single occupancy or single family, Georgia doesn't give a shit. So I can't fall back on that. But when you get to apartments, obviously, and multi-use tenants, yeah, then you can have something to fall back on. But Georgia really doesn't give a shit about a single dwelling home.
Well, I don't think North Carolina really does either, but out of general practice, like double cylinder deadbolts, I don't want to do. We had customers last year. I didn't deal with them directly, but I was in the shop when they came in, and it was a mother and daughter who lived together in a single dwelling house, and one of them lived in the basement, and the only means of egress, they wanted to install a double cylinder deadbolt on. The only means of egress from that basement, and none of us wanted to have our names or fingerprints on that at all. So I guess that's kind of what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I don't miss those days.
Yeah. If it was up to me, I would not do 90% of the residential that I do.
Tyler, just to talk about last week again, episode about pricing, someone on Reddit just said, if you never lose any sales, your prices are too low.
I would agree. Yeah.
I would just charge more.
Or just charge more. Quote it to where if it's a shitty job and it's going to be a pain in the ass, quote it so high that hopefully they'll go somewhere else. But in my experience, when you do that, they're going to call you back about 3 days later and say, yeah, we decided to bite the bullet on this. Mm-hmm. And then that quote has bit you in the ass, and you're going to have to just man up and do it. So who do you go see if you want all your cheap ass hardware master keyed? Probably not Jeff. He's already said that, but he's going to really tell us why after we listen to some free music.
There are so many times customers want things done but don't want to spend the money, like Master Key and cheap hardware, for example. Or maybe a key got cut on a machine that was definitely not the best choice. Sometimes customers insist on having you make keys for certain cars no matter what the risk. If you make any of these choices, you'll probably wind up regretting them. And as I talked about earlier, people are always bringing in Defiant stuff to be either keyed to their master key, which is really just a change key, or putting it on a system because they don't want to buy Kwikset hardware, which, while not great, at least master keys better. And it's one of those things that you may choose to not do it. I don't have that luxury. We do it. We don't love it. We do our best to make everything work and make sure that it's not going to cause too many problems. Tim, you work in a shop. I guess, do you see that? I mean, you don't have stuff coming in, you're not in the shop full time like I am, but I'm sure you've had people bring stuff in, maybe a cheap electronic lock that they want you to install and they just insist on it.
We actually have a corporate customer, commercial customer that is an apartment complex. All of their hardware is Kwikset. Well, let me back up. All of their hardware is Kwikset, Keyway, KW1, Keyway, space and depth. It's not all Kwikset. And we created, years before I started, the shop created a master chart for them because they wanted it all master keyed. And they will buy whatever they get off the shelf. They will go and buy their hardware, their deadbolts, and then bring them to us to key up. We have no clue what unit is going on. Is sort of cobbled together almost. And they'll bring it to us and say, we need this keyed up on our master new change key. So we go through our list, through our charts, and we find a new one and we do it. And it fucking sucks because there are times that, they'll buy Gatehouse or Defiant or they do know not to buy Smart Key, but that's out of their budget, I think. So we don't We've only seen that like once. So yeah,
Yeah, my favorite is when they bring stuff in and they have 12 different buildings and the boxes say that they're from one building and they're actually keyed to a different one, and it just takes longer to get them apart and figure out what goes where. But we don't necessarily care what suite it's going on, but we at least need to know what building and how many and what date. Speaking of that, having key machines that are better than others at cutting keys, cutting Medico on the HPC 1200 is not fun, but it's the only option that I have. Tyler doesn't have that problem because they've got better machines than probably some factories do. I guess what is your policy if you were having a retail shop? Would you buy the machine, after having a certain amount of keys that you can't do? Would you decide then, okay, I'm going to invest and buy a machine that does this? What's your take, Tyler?
Well, the dedicated Medico machines are expensive as hell. I mean, they're like 15,000 MSRP list price. I would go with an ITL, which is what we use. We've got 3 of them, but we've got 5 of them, but we've got one that's custom to Medico. It's kind of a set and forget thing, and it rotates. But yeah, the HPC is hell cutting Medico on those. A Medico machine itself, it's dedicated. It's one keyway or a few keyways, platforms, whatever it may be. That's a lot of money, and that's a lot of space to take up just for one offering that you sell.
Sure. And I will say that, we had an older high security duplicator for automotive. After a while, we were having issues with it, and we did get a new one because, the machine was 30 years old and we were just having problems with it. But that's something that gets used every day, even though it is only basically for one function. The HPC is very versatile and they work great for all the other stuff. I'm sure if it were up to me, we'd have nice and shiny machines. I know that the framing that we use for Peaks does do Medico, but you have to buy other parts and swap things out. And Tim, what say you?
I wanted to say in our shop we do have the Medico machine, which sounds like a vacuum cleaner giving a job to a blender. We have that for all of our M3 keys that we do, but we do have a couple customers who are on the like Med 4 keyway that's been out of patent for years, and those keys we have to cut on the 1200, and they're a bit of a pain in the ass to do. They come out working okay, but it's just kind of a pain in the ass to do everything, to rotate your cutter and line everything up, do all your cuts, and you really have to do like 20 or 30 of them to get your rhythm and figure out how you like doing it. Do you like doing cuts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or do you want to do all your left cuts and then all your right cuts and then all your center cuts? I like going in order, but that's still a lot of switching back and forth. So that's what I've got to say about that.
And part of it is because the machine can be different every time you use it. We always pin up a cylinder and make sure that it works when we're cutting keys. So even cutting one key takes the time to pin up a cylinder, make sure that it works, just to be 100%. And then my last thing, which neither of you guys are lucky enough to do automotive, I will just say that when somebody calls, there are certain brands of car keys that we immediately will not do because either it's like the warded padlock key thing earlier, the price is not, or the reward is not worth the risk. Audi, VW, the German foreign type of cars, yeah, we can cut it, but we can't really do the programming and it's just not worth it. Certain Mitsubishi keys, we know from experience, there's that when we had the Jet clone, you just knew that you do 3 or 4 of them and you have problems, something isn't right. And not saying that if it's that car, whatever it is, there's certain ones you're going to have trouble with. From experience that if you're doing a GM Prox key, to try to block off more time because it could take a half hour instead of 10 minutes. Could we originate keys if someone tows the car in, depending on what it is? Yes. it's generally not worth it because again, you're taking somebody who's in the shop and dedicating them to do something else when they can't be working on other things. Somebody brought in a trunk lock from a 1948 Buick. Of course, the code didn't work. The locks rusted together. After doing some research and talking to some people, now I know how it comes apart. I'm not going to turn that work. It's work that you think will be easy, but ends up not being. You charge accordingly. The guy said, yeah, I'm going to be out of town. If you can get it done in the day or two, that's great. If not, just let me know. He's not driving his 48 Buick right now, so he's okay with it. And it's cool, we get to take our time and work on. I don't know, in the end, will it be worth it? What you can charge for it? I don't know. But, over time, you learn what things are going to cause trouble and what things, yeah, okay, we can do it, but we have to adjust X, Y, Z. So just, you learn it over time.
Yeah. In our shop, like you said, I don't do automotive. We do have our automotive guru, and she's scheduled to be in the shop, certain times, certain days. We kind of figure that out as we go. But she's awesome at doing things, like I've seen her do 49 Studebakers. She's gone out and done that and made keys for those. And she's also, run of the mill everything. But all of us know any German made car, we just automatically say, no, we don't do that. And it's more of a programming thing. Like we've got equipment and stuff, but it's one of those where we don't do it every single day. And so we're not really willing to take the risk on it, because if we charge our standard rate on one of those cars, then it could cost us a lot more time to do it. Nissan Rogue, between the certain year models, what is it, like 2014 to 2019 or something like that? We don't do it, and we just have a blanket policy. If you have a Nissan Rogue, go to the dealership. That's our recommendation.
Sort of like Jason, we don't do Hondas.
We do Hondas all day, every day. I am literally the only one in the shop, including the boss's wife, who's not a locksmith. She knows how to cut Honda keys, and I've cut like 2. I try to avoid automotive like the plague.
You're a smart man. All right, well, we've touched on a few turds so far, and Tyler's going to touch on a few more. And I'm not talking about his recent toilet replacement. We'll be back in a few minutes on the 3 Tumblers.
In our careers in this trade, we eventually figure out what's going to give us grief. And I'm not talking like the peanuts good grief, but more like the maniacal money and time eating job grief. So why do things like electromechanical cylinders, foreign residential electronic locks, and ladder pulls give me grief? The first thing that really gives me grief are electromechanical cylinders. The problem is that, they've been around 2 decades now almost, but primarily the main one these days is the Click, which is a shared technology between ASSA ABLOY. And they've been around since at least 2008, 2009, and they still suck. There's still problems galore. We're not a Click dealer, but we have customers that use it through other subcontractors, and all I hear are problems. Jeff, Tim, have you heard any issues with the Click or any other electromechanical cylinders in general?
Just the cost. It's pretty much been cost prohibitive. I mean, I've seen a couple of them demoed, but I don't know anybody that uses it. I do know there were some stores when I worked at the other company that used CyberKey, and don't know what they ended up, if they still have it or what the issue, if they're still using it or not. I know having to replace batteries and keys is a pain because we do it for cars. Another person I know, he bring up Reddit. Somebody said, "Oh, again, he basically said electronics is the future. Why are you bothering with keys?" And I just wanted to, strangle the person over the computer. It's your least favorite thing to hear, and I'm starting to agree.
We actually, we don't offer, we're not a dealer for any type of electromechanical cylinders, but we do work for a couple national service providers that have sold some big box stores on the Medico XT. There are two viewpoints that I have on it personally. Is the one is pain in the ass because you always have to call back to that NSP and coordinate with them when you're dealing with the cylinder and key issue itself. Now, granted, 99% of that work is on other hardware because of their contract, but when you're dealing with the actual XT cylinder itself, it's a pain because I've got somebody on the phone and I'm standing there with somebody who has their key, their phone, their login to the app. And so it can be a pain. The other thing that I would like to say is that, I was just recently in class for the NCLA. We did get to talking about electromechanical key cylinders and how, Jeff, what you were saying with CyberLock, there were questions about the security of the technology in that and the information contained in it. But I think people have questions about the integrity of the data in those cylinders can be a little blown out of proportion and is pretty much just really deviant people who think that you can easily withdraw that information from those cylinders. I think there's both benefits and, both positives and negatives to it, but it's a pretty cool system. And I think some places that have been dealing with like Click a little bit longer may have a little bit better grip on it. There are a few YouTube channels out there who have really gone into a deep dive on the Click system. As far as physical implementation, I've not seen it here. I see it at all the trade shows that I've gone to, but I don't know. I'm kind of at the experimental phase in my career where
I thought you guys did Salto.
We do Salto.
Don't they use electronic cylinders?
It is not electromechanical.
Okay.
You bring up a good point too, or at least I'll give a personal story. The hockey team I follow religiously, the arena was originally outfitted with CyberLock keys. Have y'all seen those?
That's what we were just talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the triangle ones,
Mhm.
They had so many problems with it that after 20 years of dealing with it, they ripped everything out of the arena and just went to Sargent. I don't even know the keyway. I just see it now. We were given an opportunity to bid on it at one point, but they were so disgusted and infuriated with it that they just fucking threw it all away and went back to basics.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes the most simple solution is better.
Yeah. I mean, we see Jason and I were just talking this morning, probably 60 to 70% of our commercial business now is access control. And we've not explored the electromechanical options just because of for one, the buy-in point on it. I mean, you have to sink some money into it. And for two, the learning curve, and three, just the added labor, because even if you pick up the programming and configuration and everything, then you still have to spend time actually pinning cylinders. So
yeah,
that's all I've got to say.
Yeah, they keep trying to talk me into either offering it or at least evaluating it for potential offerings. When I say they, I mean Medico. The answer for me is always the same. No, you still got some ways to go before I get to that point with you. But anywho, that's electromechanical cylinders. The next one's foreign residential electronic locks. What I mean by this is not necessarily anything made foreign. I'm talking about what you can find on Amazon right now that looks chic and cool and novel. And then you get the lock and it's just shit. And sometimes you don't even get programming instructions. You have to figure it out. You have to navigate these weird websites and Google Translate and all of that. Have either of you ran into these shitty ass locks on Amazon from China and wherever?
Yes,
Yeah,
I
we've had
have.
a few brought in, just basically couldn't rekey them. Told them to go somewhere.
So I was on a rekey job, commercial rekey, rented, leased space in a business park. The property managements who is somebody we deal with a lot, and I go there, and the tenants are there. Is basically front door, back door rekey is all that's usually required at that property. They had a electronic lever that they had purchased that they wanted me to install on a door. And I told them, I said, look, I've never seen this before. Most of the instructions are in Chinese. I have no clue how to use it. I can put screws through, components and stuff. I can attach it to the door. I cannot guarantee that I make it work. And I said, and you will have to pay the installation fee, regardless of if it works or not. And he agreed with it. I had him actually sign, like we have a pre-work signature thing in our software. So I had him sign on that before, and I put it on, and it amazingly, it fucking worked. But it had like 7 dimple keys. And I said, look, if you lose any of these keys, there is not a locksmith in this country who can make a duplicate for you. We don't get blanks. We if we had the DSD information on it, maybe we could use something to duplicate these, but you're gonna look at like $100 a key. So when this thing breaks, call us to come out. We'll drill the damn thing off the door, and we will replace it with something that we can service.
Yeah. And I had a couple last week that I really guess I could have told the guy they weren't electronic, but they were just really cheap quickset keyway levers. And I had to use snap ring pliers to get them apart from the inside. I was able to rekey them. It sucked. I charged them like $15 a piece, more than we would have. If it was a normal rekey with a key in shop is $9. So I charged him enough. I see the faces you're making. Some guy is telling me to charge more, but it was a lot more labor. It was a pain in the ass, and I hope he never brings any more in.
Well, the guy telling you to charge more is a millionaire, so who are you to question him?
Uh,
The next one on my list are ladder pools, which have just popped up out of nowhere over the last 5-6 years. Jeff, you ever seen those up in northern Ohio?
just pretty much from the pictures you've shared. I mean, I've seen pictures that customers have brought in needing cylinders, but luckily I have not had to take one apart.
Tim, how art thou? How about you?
I when you told me the other day that this was going to be one of your points, I didn't even Google it, because I did actually Google it, and I came up with nothing, and I have no clue as to the hardware.
So the ladder pulls are basically fancy door pulls that appear to be ladders. You've got rungs, and then you've got, the side of the ladder that you hold on to. Them primarily glass Herculite doors, but they put them on wood doors sometimes. The problem with these things is that it's kind of a wild west right now as far as cylinder format. Most use rim cylinders, some use mortise cylinders, but it just throws a huge wrench into building hardware standards for large building property managers. And we're running into it now. Small format's not so much a problem, but if you've got a building that's 99% mortise cylinder or 100% mortise cylinder, and now you're throwing in rim, they don't have that inventory on hand. So then you've got to order it from the factory if you don't have enough on hand, which is a 4 to 6 week delay, which really throws things into an issue as far as we're calling you 2 weeks before the customer moves in. We need 10 rim cylinders, and I've only got 8 in stock. The other thing is that not all rim formats are the same. You've got Sargent, which has its own bolt pattern, and then you've got everybody else, which shares the same bolt pattern. So you got to hope that the mounting brackets, mounting hardware, will accept both, and if not, can be altered to accommodate the oddball Sargent. So I hate them. I don't like them. They're just a pain in the ass. I think they're obnoxious looking, atrocious looking, but that's me. Fellas, any last points, Jeff?
Just know your hardware inside and out, I guess, would be important.
Yeah, property managers need to rein them in. Tim?
Well, after we get done recording, Tyler, I want you to give me an education on what these ladder pulls are. But yeah, if I see something that is completely unfamiliar to me and I take pictures of it and send it to my boss and he says, I have no clue what that is, and I send it to you and you say, don't fucking touch it, I'm not going to touch it. That's all I've got to say.
They're easy to service and put apart and pull back together and all that shit. It's just the thing is that you got, like I said, you got a building 99.99% on mortise cylinder, and then you've got 20 rim cylinders that just pop up out of nowhere. It's kind of hard to accommodate and plan for, especially when you're only given a few weeks notice. Anyways, I'm gonna toss this turd of the 3 tumblers to Tim so he can maybe take us to some spare parts. What do you say? That was fucking good.
With all the turds we've touched today, hopefully everyone has washed their hands and found a decent spare part. Tyler, what's yours?
As Jeff alluded to earlier, and kind of apropos to my situation, I had to replace all my toilets in my house yesterday and some fixtures to get into my county's compliance for low flow plumbing. Wife ain't happy, but I don't give a shit. But she didn't want to spend all that money, but what can you do?
So you had to pay money in order to be able to dutifully give your shits.
Had to pay that, yeah. Had to do that, and then also to just be able to access water from my fucking county.
That sucks. All right, I'm going next. Ozzy Osbourne announced earlier this week that there are no more tours. He is canceling all of his future tours and made the announcement that he is physically unable to perform live anymore, which is a shame. I never really liked Ozzy like when I was younger, but as I got older, I really started to appreciate him. Jeff, wrap us up on spare parts.
I was looking at some old newspaper articles from my university, and there was a guy there whose name was Frank Pizza, and I just think everybody needed to know that.
That's an awesome spare part.
Going back to what you said, you've never seen Ozzy in concert. I did. I was 13 years old. I saw him. I saw Pantera. I saw Incubus, Static X, Godsmack, all at Ozfest back in 2000.
I'm going to make a confession here that I've only made to close friends. I've never been to an actual rock concert ever in my entire life. Classical music, handbells, yes. Rock concert, never.
Been working security?
Even doing that.
Wow.
Yeah, I never forget that. It was on July 4th too, because they everybody was kind of shit-faced. But yeah, 13-year-old Tyler, huh?
I mean, I wanted to see the Stones before Charlie Watts died. I mean, Keith Richards, he really worried me when he said he was going to quit drinking, because I'm like, well, shit, the Stones are all going to die out within 2 years. So yeah, never been to a rock concert. Really want to though. Probably either The Who or Styx.
Oh, fuck, buddy, I've seen Styx 9 times now. I got to go. I'll drive up there and see Styx with you again.
I've never seen it, so pop my cherry on it.
Jesus.
9 times.
Well, at least I have to calculate. They've been touring in Alpharetta since our new amphitheater opened. back in 08, 09, and they've come every year but 2. So that's about 9, 10, 11, something.
Well, hopefully you were pooping on company time while listening to us today. Our executive producer is the tall Tyler J. Thomas. Our technical producer is the lovely Jeff Moss. I'm your writer and editor, Tim Coleman. Our creative director is Drew A. Blank. Boy, isn't that true. Figure skating coach is Landon McKeester. And our chief legal counsel is Hugh Lewis Dewey of Dewey, Cheatham & Howe, otherwise known to the parking attendant as Huey Louie Dewey.
Keep your stick on the ice.
Boss makes $1, I make a dime. That's why I shit on company time.
Y'all have fun. Stay out of trouble. This has been a Three Tumblers production. Season 1, Episode 9. Copyright 2023. All rights reserved. Find this episode and others wherever you get your podcasts.